The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched for miles in every direction. Thousands of alien species sat in floating platforms that rose like mountains toward a ceiling made of living light. Some had scales. Some had wings. Some were made of pure energy. They had gathered from every corner of the known universe, and today, they had gathered to judge humanity. Ambassador Lee Hannah stood alone on the central platform. She was a small woman with gray streaks in her black hair, but she stood straight like a soldier. Around her, the voices of 1,000 worlds whispered and murmured. She could feel their eyes on her. Some looked with curiosity. Most looked with fear. A few looked with hate. High Arbiter Moreth floated forward on his platform. He was a Velen, tall and thin, with skin like polished silver. His people had ruled 300 star systems for over 50,000 years. To him, humanity was nothing more than children playing with fire. The council recognizes the accused, Moreth said. His voice echoed through the hall like thunder. The species known as humans. Origin world. Earth. Time since first contact. 60 standard years. Hannah lifted her chin. We are not accused. We are members of this council. A ripple of laughter moved through the hall. Moreth's thin lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. You were members, he said. That is why we are here today. In the observation deck high above the main floor, Admiral Kongte watched in silence. He was an old man now, with a face like weathered stone. He had commanded Earth's small fleet for 30 years. He had shaken hands with alien admirals and shared drinks with beings from distant stars. He had believed, truly believed, that humanity had found its place among the stars. Now he watched that belief die. The charges against humanity are as follows, Moreth continued. He waved his hand, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the hall. Uncontrolled population growth, aggressive territorial expansion, dangerous weapons development, and most serious of all, evolutionary instability. Anna's hands tightened into fists. Evolutionary instability? What does that even mean? It means you change too fast. Commander Nall of the Dorith Confederacy spoke up. He was massive, with 4 arms and skin like tree bark. In 60 years, your technology has advanced more than most species advance in 1,000. Your population has spread to 12 colony worlds. Your military has grown from nothing to a force that concerns even the oldest empires. Is progress a crime now? Hannah demanded. Progress is not the crime, Moreth said softly. The crime is what you might become. We have seen your history, Ambassador. Your wars, your weapons, your endless hunger for more. Every species in this hall has studied your past, and every species has asked the same question. What happens when humans become powerful enough to threaten us all? The hall fell silent. Hannah looked around at the thousands of faces watching her. She saw fear in their eyes, real fear. These beings had traveled between stars when humans still lived in caves. They had built empires that spanned galaxies, and they were afraid of her people. Part of her wanted to laugh. Part of her wanted to scream. We have never attacked any member of this council, she said, keeping her voice steady. We have followed every law. We have respected every treaty. We have asked for nothing except the chance to learn and grow alongside you. And that is precisely what frightens us, Moreth replied. You learn too quickly. You grow too fast. Today, you follow our laws. But what about tomorrow? What about 100 years from now, when your ships outnumber ours and your weapons outmatch ours? So you punish us for crimes we have not committed, for crimes we might never commit. Moreth spread his hands. We protect ourselves from a threat before it becomes unstoppable. Surely you understand. Your own history is filled with such choices. Up in the observation deck, Admiral Kung Tae turned to his aide, a young captain named Park Woo. The young man's face was red with anger. They cannot do this, Park Woo whispered. We have rights. We have nothing, Kung Tae said quietly. Not here. Not today. Down on the central platform, Hannah made her final plea. She spoke of humanity's achievements. She spoke of their art and music and dreams. She spoke of the human doctors who had cured diseases on alien worlds, the human engineers who had helped rebuild after natural disasters, the human explorers who had mapped dangerous regions of space that others feared to enter. She spoke for an hour. She gave the best speech of her life. It changed nothing. The vote was 847 to 12 in favor of exile. Marith read the sentence in his cold, echoing voice. Earth would be stripped of all galactic trade rights. All human ships would be recalled to the Sol system. A quarantine barrier would be erected around their star. Any human vessel that crossed that barrier would be destroyed without warning. Humanity was being locked in a cage. This council wishes humanity no harm, Morith said, and he almost sounded sincere. We simply wish to ensure that humanity can do no harm. In time, perhaps in 1,000 years or 10,000, this decision may be revisited. Until then, Earth will remain in isolation. The platforms began to float away. The session was over. Humanity's future had been decided in a single afternoon. Hannah stood alone on the central platform as the great hall emptied. She did not cry. She did not scream. She simply stood there, watching the aliens leave. Watching her dreams crumble to dust, Admiral Kung Tae found her there an hour later. He walked slowly across the empty floor, his footsteps echoing in the silence. I failed, Hannah said without looking at him. I failed everyone, no. Kung Tae stood beside her and looked up at the ceiling of living light. They failed. They let their fear blind them. They made a decision based on what we might become instead of what we are. What difference does it make? The result is the same. Kung Tae was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was calm and certain. They think they have contained us. They think this barrier will keep humanity small and weak forever. But they have made a terrible mistake. Hannah finally looked at him. What mistake? The old admiral smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who could see the future clearly. They have given us a reason to prove them right, he said. They feared what humanity might become. Now, we will show them exactly what we can become. Not because we want to threaten them, but because we will never let anyone cage us again. He turned and walked toward the exit. At the door, he paused and looked back at Hannah. Ambassador, tell them to prepare. The galaxy has forgotten about us, and that is good. Let them forget. Let them grow comfortable, because one day they will remember. And on that day, they will understand the mistake they made today. He walked out into the starlight. Leaving Hannah alone with the echoes of his words, the exile had begun. But it would not last forever. 30 years passed like a whisper in the void. The galaxy moved on. Trade routes expanded. Empires rose and fell. New species were discovered and welcomed into the council. Old enemies made peace. Old friends went to war. The universe continued its endless dance of chaos and order. And through it all, no one thought about Earth. The quarantine barrier glowed at the edge of the Sol system, a wall of energy that stretched across millions of miles. Automated stations watched for any sign of human ships trying to escape. In the first year, there had been a few attempts. Small vessels trying to slip through. Desperate people who could not accept their cage. The stations had destroyed them all without mercy. After that, the attempts stopped. Earth went quiet, and the galaxy forgot. High Arbiter Morath sometimes wondered what was happening behind that barrier, but the wondering never lasted long. He had an empire to run, treaties to negotiate, disputes to settle. Humanity was a problem that had been solved. There was no need to think about them anymore. He was wrong. Behind the barrier, humanity had not given up. They had not accepted their fate. They had done something far more dangerous. They had gotten to work. Dr. Yoon Sora stood in her laboratory on the dark side of the moon and watched the latest test results scroll across her screen. She was 60 years old now, with silver hair and eyes that had seen too many failures. But today, for the first time in a decade, she allowed herself to smile. It works, she whispered. It actually works. Her assistant, a young engineer named Kim Dae, looked up from his console. The new fuel synthesis? Better than works. Look at these numbers. Sora pulled up the data for him to see. We have achieved faster-than-light travel without a single drop of alien fuel. Our own formula. Our own design. Completely independent of anything the galaxy gave us. Kimday stared at the screen. His hands began to shake when Earth was exiled. Council had cut off all access to the rare materials needed for interstellar travel. They had assumed this would keep humanity trapped forever. After all, every species in the galaxy depended on the same fuel sources. Everyone knew that faster than light, travel was impossible without them. Everyone had been wrong. Humanity had spent 30 years proving them wrong. How soon can we scale up production? Kimday asked. We already have, Sora said. The outer stations have been manufacturing this fuel for 5 years. We have enough for a fleet. A fleet. Kimday blinked. What fleet? Sora smiled and pulled up another file. A star map appeared, showing the Sol system and the space beyond. But this map had markings that Kimday had never seen before. Hidden bases. Secret shipyards. Entire stations built in the darkness between stars, invisible to the Council's sensors. The fleet we have been building in secret, Sora said. 400 warships. All equipped with technology the galaxy has never seen. In the military command center on Mars, General Biko addressed his officers. He was a hard man with a scarred face and cold eyes. He had taken over after Admiral Kongte died 5 years ago, and he had continued the old man's work with ruthless efficiency. Today marks the 30th anniversary of our exile, he said. His voice was quiet, but carried to every corner of the room. 30 years since the galaxy decided we were too dangerous to be free. 30 years since they locked us in a cage and threw away the key. He paused and looked at the faces before him. Young men and women who had grown up knowing nothing but the barrier, who had been raised on stories of the day humanity was cast out. They expected us to wither and die. They expected us to fight among ourselves, to waste away in isolation, to become the primitive animals they always thought we were. Biko's lips curved into a thin smile. Instead, we became something else entirely. He pressed a button, and a holographic display filled the room. Ships unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Sleek and deadly, bristling with weapons that did not exist in any council database. The Velen Empire has 3,000 warships, Biko said. The Dorth Confederacy has 2,000. Together, the entire Galactic Council commands perhaps 15,000 vessels capable of true combat. He let that number sink in before continuing. Our 400 ships would not survive a direct war. But we are not planning a war. We are planning something better. He zoomed out the display to show the space beyond the barrier. In 30 years, we have secretly colonized 47 star systems. Worlds that the Council overlooked. Worlds too far from the main trade routes to matter. We have built cities, factories, training grounds. A civilization in the shadows. One of the young officers raised her hand. Sir, what is the purpose of all this? If we are not planning to fight the Council, then why build such a fleet? Biko turned to face her. Because one day, the galaxy will need us. One day, something will happen that the Council cannot handle alone. And on that day, we will be ready. Ready for what, sir? Ready to prove them wrong? Biko's eyes gleamed with something that might have been anger, or might have been hope. They exiled us because they feared what we might become. We will show them what we chose to become. Not conquerors. Not destroyers. Something better. Right. He turned back to the display and stared at the stars. Admiral Kang Te told me something before he died. He said that humanity's greatest strength was not our technology, or our numbers, or our weapons. It was our ability to surprise, to do the thing no one expected, to rise when everyone thought we would fall. The galaxy has forgotten about us, Biko said softly. Good. Let them forget. Let them grow comfortable in their fear and their arrogance. Because the day will come when they remember. And on that day, they will learn what 30 years of silence really meant. Far away, in the comfortable halls of the Galactic Council, High Arbiter Morath was celebrating his species' 10,000th year of interstellar civilization. He raised a glass of rare wine and smiled at the dignitaries around him. To peace, he said, to stability, to the eternal order of the galaxy. Everyone drank. Everyone smiled. Everyone believed that the future was secure. They had no idea that in the darkness beyond their sight, 400 human warships waited in silence. They had no idea that 47 hidden worlds trained soldiers and built weapons. They had no idea that a species they had dismissed as children had become something far more dangerous. They had no idea that their eternal order was about to be shattered. But they would learn, soon enough. They would all learn. The first warning came from a small mining colony on the edge of known space. A simple distress signal, barely a whisper across the void. By the time anyone noticed it, the colony was already gone. The second warning came from a research station 3 star systems away. The scientists had just enough time to transmit a single image before their station went dark. The image showed something massive moving through space. Something that looked like a cloud of black metal and living flesh, stretching across the stars like a wound in reality. The third warning came from an entire planet. 12 billion souls screaming into the void as their world was consumed. The council finally paid attention, but by then, it was already too late. High Arbiter Morath stood in the emergency chamber of the Galactic Council, surrounded by admirals and generals from 100 species. The holographic display before them showed a map of the galaxy, and that map was bleeding red. "We are calling it the Harrow Swarm," said the council's chief analyst. "A small creature with 6 eyes that all blinked at different times. Based on recovered data, it appears to be a biomechanical entity of unknown origin. Part machine, part living organism. It consumes everything in its path and uses the raw material to create more of itself." "How many systems have fallen?" Morath demanded. "In the past 3 weeks, 47. The room went silent. 47 systems. Hundreds of billions of lives, gone in less than a month. Commander Null of the Dorith Confederacy slammed his massive fist on the table. "This is impossible. Nothing moves that fast. Nothing destroys that efficiently." "The Harrow Swarm does not care what you think is possible," the analyst replied quietly. "It simply continues. Our best estimates suggest it will reach the core systems within 6 months. Morath forced himself to stay calm. "What do we know about stopping it?" "Very little. Standard weapons appear to have minimal effect. The swarm adapts to every attack within hours. Its central intelligence, if it has one, remains undetected. Then we hit it with everything we have." Null stood up, his forearms spread wide. "Gather the combined fleet. Every ship from every member world. We meet this enemy at Vorn Prime, and we destroy it." No one argued. No one had a better plan. Within 2 weeks, the largest fleet in galactic history assembled at Vorn Prime. 15,000 warships from 80 different species. The pride of the Galactic Council. The defenders of civilization, they were not enough. Cho-Yun was 26 years old, and she had never seen an alien until 3 days ago. She worked as a communications officer at one of humanity's secret border colonies, a small station hidden in a system that did not officially exist. Her job was simple: monitor the space beyond the barrier and report anything unusual. For 3 years, there had been nothing to report. The galaxy ignored humanity. Humanity ignored the galaxy right back. Then the refugees started arriving. At first, it was just a few ships. Damaged vessels with desperate crews fleeing something they could not name. Yun was not sure what to do with them. Her orders were clear: maintain secrecy. Do not reveal human presence to any outside species. But she could not just let them die. She gave them food, water, medical supplies. She listened to their stories, and what she heard made her blood run cold. "It came from nowhere," whispered a Velen survivor, his silver skin pale with terror. "Our fleet, our mighty fleet, 15,000 ships. It destroyed them in a single day. Not defeated, destroyed. Utterly, completely." "Vorn Prime is gone," said a Dorith refugee, his bark-like skin cracked and bleeding. The planet itself, consumed, eaten, turned into more of the swarm. The stories kept coming. Hundreds of ships, thousands of refugees, all telling the same tale of horror and destruction. Ian sent a message to Earth. She expected it would take days to get a response. Instead, General Biko himself appeared on her screen within an hour. "Tell me everything," he said. She did. When she finished, Biko was quiet for a long moment. His scarred face showed no emotion, but his eyes burned with something intense. "How many refugees have reached your station?" "Over 3,000, sir. More arriving every hour. Help them. Give them whatever they need." Biko paused and prepared to receive more. "Many more. I am sending additional personnel to your station, sir." Yoon hesitated. "What about secrecy? What about the plan to remain hidden?" "The plan has changed." Biko's voice was hard as iron. "The galaxy is burning. The council that exiled us is broken. Soon they will come begging for our help. And will we help them? After everything they did to us?" Biko did not answer immediately. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, almost thoughtful. "Admiral Kung Tae once told me that humanity's true power was not in our weapons or our technology. It was in our ability to choose, to decide what kind of species we want to be." He looked directly at Yoon through the screen. "The galaxy feared what we might become. Now we will show them what we are. Not because we owe them anything, but because it is right." The transmission ended. Yoon sat alone in her control room, surrounded by the sounds of alien refugees crying and praying in languages she did not understand. 3 days later, the message arrived. It came on every frequency, broadcast to every human station and colony. High Arbiter Morith himself appeared on the screen, his silver face haggard and broken. "To the people of Earth," he said. His voice trembled. "I am High Arbiter Morath of the Velen Empire. 30 years ago, I led the vote to exile your species. I believed you were dangerous. I believed isolation would protect us from your potential." He paused, and Yoon saw something she never expected to see in an alien's eyes. Shame. But I was wrong. We were all wrong. Not about your potential, but about what we should have done with it. Morath took a shaky breath. "The Harrow Swarm has destroyed our fleet. It has consumed our worlds. We cannot stop it. We have tried everything, and we have failed." His voice broke. "We require assistance. Please, if there is any mercy in your hearts, any forgiveness for what we did to you, we need your help. The galaxy needs your help. Without it, all of us, every species, every world, everything we have built across thousands of years, will be consumed." The message ended in the command center on Mars. General Biko watched the recording 3 times. Then he turned to face his officers. "Contact President Shin-Nari," he said. "Tell her it is time." "Time for what, sir?" Biko looked at the star map on the wall. Somewhere out there, the Harrow Swarm was devouring worlds. Somewhere out there, the same species that had caged humanity were screaming for help. Time to show the galaxy what humanity really is. The silent decades were over. The reckoning had begun. The United Earth. Assembly had not met in full session for 15 years. There had been no need. Humanity was united in purpose, focused on the silent work of rebuilding and growing stronger. Decisions were made quickly and efficiently by leaders who trusted each other. But this decision was too important. For anything less than every voice, President Shin-Nari stood at the center of the Great Chamber, looking up at the thousands of representatives from every nation and colony. She was a small woman with kind eyes and steel in her spine. She had been born after the exile, raised on stories of the day humanity was cast out. Now, she held the fate of two civilizations in her hands. "You have all seen the message from High Arbiter Morath," she said. Her voice was calm and clear. "The same alien who led the vote to exile us now begs for our help. The galaxy that locked us in a cage is burning." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Some voices were angry. Some were satisfied. Some were simply tired. "For 30 years we have prepared for this moment," Nari continued. "We have built ships. We have trained soldiers. We have created weapons that the galaxy has never seen. We have the power to save them." She paused and let the words hang in the air. "The question is, should we?" A representative from the European Federation stood up. His face was hard with old anger. "They threw us away like garbage. They left us to die. Why should we risk our lives for species that wanted us extinct?" Cheers erupted from one side of the chamber. A representative from the African Union rose to respond. "Because we are not them. Because revenge is easy, but mercy is hard. Because if we let the galaxy burn when we could have saved it, we become exactly what they feared." More cheers from the other side. The debate raged for hours. Old wounds were opened. Old angers were released. Some spoke of justice. Some spoke of forgiveness. Some spoke of practical matters, the risks of battle, the cost of intervention, the possibility of failure. Through it all, President Nari listened. She did not interrupt. She did not guide. She let her people speak their hearts. Finally, when the voices had exhausted themselves, she raised her hand for silence. "I have heard all of you. I understand your anger. I share it. 30 years ago, I was a child when my grandmother told me why we could not visit the stars. She cried when she explained that the galaxy had decided we were monsters." Nari's voice softened. "But my grandmother also told me something else. She said that true strength is not in what you can destroy. It is in what you choose to protect. The galaxy feared what we might become. Now we have a choice. We can become what they feared, or we can become something they never imagined." She looked around the chamber, meeting as many eyes as she could. "I choose hope. I choose mercy. I choose to prove that humanity is more than our worst moments." She took a deep breath. "I am ordering our fleet to cross the barrier and engage the Harrow Swarm, not for revenge, not for recognition, but because it is who we are." The vote was close. Closer than Nari had hoped. But in the end, humanity chose the stars over the shadows. Fleet Admiral Zhang. Minho had waited his entire life for this moment. He stood on the bridge of the HSS Resolve, the flagship of humanity's secret armada. Around him, 400 warships moved in perfect formation through the darkness of space. They were beautiful and terrible, these ships. Sleek hulls of black metal. Weapons that glowed with barely contained power. Engines that hummed with technology the galaxy had never seen. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "we are approaching the quarantine barrier." Minho nodded. "All ships, maintain formation. Weapons ready, but hold fire." The barrier appeared on the view screen. A wall of golden energy stretching across the void, studded with automated defense stations. For 30 years, this barrier had kept humanity caged. For 30 years, those stations had stood ready to destroy any human ship that tried to escape. "Sir, the stations are powering weapons. Expected." Minho's voice was calm. "Defensive screens too full. Target the stations, but wait for my command." The fleet moved closer. The stations began to fire. The first volley splashed harmlessly against the human shields. Technology that the Council had never shared, that humans had invented themselves in their years of isolation. The second volley was equally useless. "Sir, they cannot penetrate our defenses, I know." Minho allowed himself a small smile. "Return fire. Destroy the stations." Human fleet unleashed its weapons. Beams of light that cut through metal like paper. Missiles that turned into swarms of smaller projectiles, overwhelming point defenses. In less than a minute, every station was debris. Barrier stations eliminated. Minho looked at the empty space ahead. The The cage was broken. Humanity was free. All ships, he said, full speed to Keth Nebula. The galaxy is waiting. The Battle of Keth Nebula was where the remnants of the Council fleet had gathered for their last stand. 3,000 ships from 40 species, battered and desperate. Facing a hero swarm that numbered in the millions, when the human fleet arrived, no one noticed at first. The battle was chaos. Ships dying by the dozens. The swarm consuming everything in its path. Then the Resolve opened fire. A single beam of white light cut across the battlefield and struck the heart of the swarm, where it touched. The biomechanical monsters simply stopped. Their coordination vanished. Their movements became random and confused. What was that? Commander Null stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Unknown weapon signature, his officer replied. Origin, the new contacts entering the battlefield. What new contacts? The officer zoomed out the display. 400 human warships were spreading across the combat zone, moving with precision and purpose. Impossible, Null whispered. The humans are trapped behind the barrier. Not anymore. Sir? Admiral Minho's face appeared on every Council ship's communication screen. This is Fleet Admiral Jang Minho of the United Earth Defense Force. We are here to help. All Council vessels, form up behind our lines. We will handle the swarm. For a moment, no one responded. The Council captains were too shocked to speak. The species that they had exiled, the primitives they had locked away, had come to save them. Then Commander Null laughed. It was a harsh sound, full of bitter wonder. Do as they say, he ordered his surviving ships. Form up behind the humans. The human fleet advanced into the swarm. Their weapons were like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. The white beams disrupted the swarm's hive mind connection. The missiles adapted to the enemy's defenses in real time. The shields absorbed attacks that would have destroyed Council ships instantly. On the Resolve, Dr. Yoon Sora watched the battle from the science station. She was 80 years old now, frail and tired, but her eyes were bright with triumph. The Aegis protocol is working better than projected, she reported. The swarm cannot coordinate. They are attacking randomly now. Eno nodded. All ships advance. Drive them back. The battle lasted 12 hours. 12 hours of fire and fury, of sacrifice and determination. Human ships were destroyed. Human lives were lost. But the line held. And slowly, steadily, the swarm was pushed back. When it was over, surviving Council officers stared at their displays in silence. The Harrow swarm was broken. Not destroyed, not yet, but broken. Its advance had been stopped for the first time since it appeared, and it had been stopped by the species. They had tried to bury. High Arbiter Morith's ship had survived the battle. He sat alone in his quarters, watching the human fleet on his view screen. 400 ships that had emerged from nowhere. Technology that his engineers could not explain. Tactics that his admirals could not match. 30 years ago, he had voted to exile humanity because he feared their potential. He had been right to fear it, but he had been wrong about everything else. The war against the Harrow swarm lasted 3 more years after the Battle of Keth Nebula. 3 years of hunting the enemy through dark space. 3 years of liberating consumed worlds and rebuilding shattered civilizations. 3 years of human and alien soldiers fighting side by side, learning to trust each other, learning to say each other as something more than strangers. When the last fragment of the swarm was destroyed in the frozen depths beyond the galactic rim, the galaxy breathed again. But nothing would ever be the same. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council looked different now. The floating platforms were still there. The ceiling of living light still glowed. But there was a new platform in the center of the chamber. A platform that had never existed before. Ambassador Lee Hanna stood on that platform, looking up at the thousands of alien faces watching her. Her hair was white now, her face lined with age and worry, but she stood straight and tall. Beside her stood Captain Park Jie, daughter of the late Captain Park Woo, a young woman with her father's fierce eyes and her own hard-earned honors. 70 years ago, Hannah had stood in this same hall and pleaded for humanity's freedom. She had failed. The galaxy had voted to exile her people, to cage them like animals, to erase them from the stars. Now she was back. High Arbiter Morath floated forward on his platform. He had aged too, his silver skin dulled with time and regret. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with emotion. "The Galactic Council recognizes the delegation from Earth," he said. "We welcome them not as petitioners, but as equals, as saviors, as the species that pulled us back from the edge of extinction." A murmur of agreement rippled through the hall. Hannah noticed that no one was looking at her with fear anymore. Some looked with respect. Some with gratitude. A few, she thought, even looked with shame. "Before we proceed," Morath continued, "there is something that must be said. Something that is long overdue." He stepped off his platform and floated down to stand before Hannah on the central stage. A High Arbiter had never done such a thing. The other aliens watched in stunned silence. 70 years ago, I led the vote to exile humanity," Morath said. His voice cracked. "I told myself it was necessary. I told myself we were protecting the galaxy from a dangerous species. I told myself that fear was wisdom." He lowered his head. "I was wrong. We were all wrong. Not because we feared your potential ambassador. We were right to see how extraordinary your species could become. We were wrong because we chose to suppress that potential instead of embracing it. We were wrong because we let fear make us cruel." Hannah said nothing. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times over the years. She had imagined anger and triumph and bitter satisfaction. But standing here now, looking at this ancient alien who had shaped so much of her life, she felt only a quiet sadness. "For 30 years, humanity suffered in isolation," Morath continued. "You lost access to the stars. You lost friends and opportunities and futures. You lost everything except your determination." He looked up and met Hannah's eyes. "On behalf of the Galactic Council, on behalf of every species that voted for exile, I apologize. We were wrong, and we will spend the rest of our existence trying to make it right." The hall was completely silent. Hannah stepped forward. She was close enough to touch Morath now, close enough to see the genuine pain in his alien eyes. She remembered the young woman she had been, standing alone on this platform while the galaxy condemned her people. She remembered the rage and despair and helplessness. She also remembered what Admiral Kongte had told her, what General Biko had said, what President Shin Nari had chosen. "High Arbiter," Hannah said softly, "you asked me once if I understood why you feared humanity. I did not answer then. I was too angry. To hurt?" She paused. "I understand now. You looked at our history and saw war. You looked at our growth and saw a threat. You looked at our potential and saw destruction. You were right to see those things. They are part of who we are." Hannah straightened her shoulders. "But they are not all of who we are. In the 30 years of exile, humanity could have turned inward. We could have become bitter and vengeful. We could have built our secret fleet for conquest instead of protection. When the Harrow Swarm came, we could have watched the galaxy burn and called it justice." Her voice grew stronger. "We chose differently. Not because we are better than you, not because we are without anger or resentment, but because we decided that who we want to be matters more than who we could be. The galaxy feared our potential. We feared it too. So we chose to channel it toward something better." She extended her hand to Morath. "Your apology is accepted, High Arbiter. The past cannot be changed, but the future is still unwritten. Let us write it together." Morath stared at her hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, he took it. The hall erupted in sound. Cheers and cries, and something that might have been hope. 3 days later, the vote was held. Humanity was offered a permanent seat on the High Council. The first species to receive such an honor in their first century of contact, the vote was unanimous. But when President Shin Nari was asked if she would accept the honor, her answer surprised everyone. "We appreciate the gesture," she said in her address to the council. "But humanity does not need a seat on your council to prove our worth. We have already proven it. What we need is something simpler. We need to be free. Free to explore, free to grow, free to become whatever we choose to be. She smiled. We will work with the Council. We will share our technology and our knowledge. We will help rebuild what was lost. But we will not become part of your hierarchy. We will remain what we have always been, a species apart. Not above you, not below you, but beside you. Partners, not subjects. It was not the answer the Council expected. But after everything that had happened, no one argued, Captain Park Ga stood on the bridge of her ship, the HSS Horizon, looking out at the stars. The war was over. The galaxy was healing. Humanity was free. A young ensign approached her. He was from one of the Dorth colonies, recruited after the war, one of the first aliens to serve in the human fleet. His bark-like skin was still fresh and green, and his eyes were full of questions. "Captain," he said, "may I ask you something?" "Of course." "The war is over. Humanity has proven itself. The galaxy respects you now. Fears you even." He hesitated. "What do humans want now? What will you do with all this power?" Ga smiled. It was the same smile her father had worn, the same smile that Admiral Kang Tae had shown before he died. A smile full of wonder and hunger and endless possibility. "The same thing we have always wanted," she said. "We want to see what is out there. We want to explore. We want to learn. We want to find new worlds and new friends and new mysteries." She turned to look at the ensign. "The galaxy exiled us because they feared our potential. But our potential was never about destruction. It was about discovery. We are explorers, young one. It is in our blood. It is in our souls. We cannot help but look at the stars and wonder what lies beyond." She turned back to the view screen. "The war is over. The cage is broken. And now, finally, we can do what we were always meant to do." She raised her hand. "Helm, set course for the Andromeda Passage. There are stars out there that no one has ever seen. Let us be the first." The ship hummed with power. The stars began to stretch and blur as the engines engaged. Captain Park Ga stood on her bridge, surrounded by human and alien crew members, and smiled. The exile was over. The future had just begun. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, the stars were waiting to tell their secrets to the species that had never stopped reaching for them. Humanity had come home at last, not to Earth, but to the universe.